Tonight on the Bigfooty podcast, we look at the game against Fremantle, we preview the game against the Bulldogs, and we have a massive special guest in former Carlton Vice-Captain Nick Stevens. All this and more coming right up. Hello and welcome to this, the 19th episode of the Bigfooty Blues podcast. I am, of course, the Wookie, and with me are my usual partners in crime, including the old Dark Navies.
I'm so thrilled to belatedly be here.
Joining us tonight is our very own Ray Martin, or Happy Dude as he calls himself.
I sure am.
And rejoining us once again is Just a Battler.
Good evening.
Devoid of caring is here tonight.
The Doc is no longer here. He has been taken over.
Before we get into the highlights, I must apologise for the sound quality tonight. We had some audio problems, and it's led to a bit of a late release, and some stuff had to be remixed. You'll be able to tell my voice is a little bit different from the rest of the recording occasionally. Unfortunately, my voice was a little bit quiet in some areas, and I didn't want you to miss out on the overpowering masculinity that is my voice in this program. So here we are. Now, guys, what were your highlights?
My highlights for the weekend was Watson kicking really good 60-metre goal, Collingwood belting Essendon, and that's pretty much the highlight of my weekend.
Yep. My highlight will be the Zach Tui Big Three.
Yeah, Watson, I think, has revealed himself as a capable swingman. In fact, I like him better up front than out back. Tui's pretty much shown up 5 or 6 of our much more highly paid so-called stars, which is fantastic. And I think the club's gone a long way towards finalising what lines are through which names for the year. So now there's a sad highlight, the last one.
I can only reiterate what the guys have been saying. Zach Tui was probably my number one highlight. 3 goals, two of them fairly close together. Gotta love an attacking halfback flanker, and man, I love it when he's got the ball in hand anywhere, probably 65, 70 out. If he can beat a tackle and shoot a goal from 50, he's going to do it. Love the attitude, and I also appreciated Watson's lead up marking. He had 4 contested marks on the weekend. That was a real step up for him.
Oh, big time.
Turning our attention to the game on the last weekend, and Carlton unfortunately didn't perform as well as we'd hoped against Fremantle. Fremantle 17-14, 116, defeated Carlton 12-8, 80. For Carlton, the goal scorers were Tui with 3, Garlett and Henderson with 2, Watson, Rome, McLean, Judd and Armfield with 1 apiece. The best for the Blues, Scotland, Robinson, Tui, Simpson, Judd and Gibbs. Carazzo was the only injury reported for Carlton out of the game. And in terms of substitutes, Kane Lucas replaced Andrew Carazzo about halfway through the second quarter. 30,457 people watched this game at Etihad Stadium, and Happy Dude was one of them. Happy Dude, how did you see the game?
A lot of people on the boards have been pretty negative about it. I didn't think that was the case at all. Freo, quite a good side this year, very evident being at the game. Around the stoppages, they were very clinical with the extracting the ball and very clean. There's a reason they're pushing top 4. We did well to stay in the game because I felt they had a lot of control over the pace and the ball and stuff, and eventually they just got away from us. Look,
it just shows how far off the pace we are at the moment. I appreciate that Fremantle are pushing top 4, and I've had some good performances against other teams, but when you see Richmond taking them to the cleaners, and we just not being able to, we were lucky to stay in the game as long as we were, and geez, did we fade fast. And we're one of the worst fourth quarter sides in the competition this year. Even the worst fourth quarter side, North Melbourne, managed to come home with a wet sail against us. So I'm not sure whether that's training workload or the game plan is we're having to work too hard earlier in the game. I'm not sure, but it's a real big cause of concern for me.
I know Mark McClure said that we basically just we don't appear fit enough to run out games. Does that sound right to you guys?
I think we're not strong enough to play the bigger, better teams, and where's it out?
Well,
it's that Murphy's playing injured. Parazzo got injured. That's two sort of not 100%ers. Judd played really well for a quarter again. I mean, we just light on in the midfield, very light on, and it takes its toll over 4 quarters.
Yeah. I mean, look, but then we were a fairly decent fourth quarter side under Ratton. So, well, we were,
No, don't. I am starting to have some serious concerns. What's going on?
I mean, it might be that this is just the year that it has to happen if you're going to have that defensive game plan and change everything. We obviously weren't as defensive before, although the stats don't really show a massive difference. But we can tell with our own eyes that we are running both ways a little bit more than we used to, and that's probably going to take a toll on the body. Maybe it's a different type of fitness we need now. Before we were able to run out games when we were being free flowing and running one way, but now that the defence. I think we have to lift our fitness to a greater level than we've had in many a year, in order to get to play real finals intensity type football. So maybe it looks bad on the first year. Maybe it's just part of the platform that you have to build to get up there long term. And we had unrealistic expectations or not, or we can throw the baby out with the bathwater. But right now we've made a commitment, so we've got to see it through.
Correct.
Okay, just looking at the stats from the game, Freo beat us in disposals. We actually beat them for kicks. They beat us for handballs. We beat them for free kicks, 19-11.
Yeah.
First, I think it might be the first free kick count we've won for a while. We lost clearances. We lost stuff in the centre. We lost in the stoppages.
Time in the 50.
Yeah, we got massacred on the inside 50s. We lost on the marks inside 50. We lost in contested possession. We beat them in tackles, and we lost in the hit-outs. So comprehensively beaten by most stats.
Correct.
So yeah,
we play teams into really good form. Western Bulldogs.
What's really alarming is Freo scoring 100 points on us. That's really alarming. If you look back through this season on who they've scored on, I scored 100 points or over. It hasn't been good. Like they bet, I don't know, it's like Doggies, West Coast. I mean, they play West Coast all the time anyway.
I still think that we've robbed Peter to pay Paul with a Henderson move forward, and I think that plays a part of it. But
yeah. And then also having Watson play forward
this week. Woohoo!
What was that?
Waite's back for us this week. Woohoo!
Yeah, we're going to talk about that in a second.
I guess we'll talk to that when we get to the next game. But I have some concerns about the balance on that side and whether there's going to be a late withdrawal. But anyway,
anything else you guys want to talk about the Freo game before we move on?
It was just one of those depressing games. I've been flat ever since. Last we did a main board podcast last night, and that was a little bit flat because everybody that was on it had lost on the weekend.
Yep.
But this, I don't know whether it's just this end of season lull before the finals start pumping everybody up again. Those that are participating, of course, but. We've got, what have we got? 4 games left. We're 2 games behind, and none of those games look easy now.
Yeah. And you know who I'm blaming for that? You
think
we're going to win one game for the rest of the season? Shit.
I didn't do it. Go back. Oh, you know what? I'm going to go back and find that old podcast. I'm going to record that snippet, and I'm going to play it back and stick it right up your jumper.
It's the
I
thought
did not have sexual relations with that one.
It's the thought that counts, my friend. Now, we've got a game against the Bulldogs this weekend, a game that we won convincingly last year with what was essentially our reserves. And the form of the Bulldogs this year does suggest that it might be a little more challenging. This game will be 9th v 15th. It's played on Saturday evening, this game. It won't be on TV, I don't believe. Although it might be. I haven't really checked. That's unusual for me. Last time we played, we defeated them 126-98 with half our side missing. In fact, the game that we played this time last year, we had more players missing than we had at any other game for 2012. But all up, let's see, 2000, and actually I got that wrong anyway. We beat them 102-84 last year. Bulldogs have beaten us twice, and we've beaten them 3 times in the last 5 games. So, won 4 of the past 6. 9 games that Eddie had between the two of us. 5 Carlton wins, 4 to the Bulldogs. And, yeah, the last time we played in round 20. Anyway, I'll be right back.
Yeah, I got a good feeling about this game. I like playing the Bulldogs. Even when they were good and we weren't so good, we used to match up well on them. I remember being in a few games where we beat them when we probably shouldn't have.
Yeah, then they beat us 2011 when they probably shouldn't have. So, you know, we sort of do that. We do that to each other a little bit.
That was a bit of revenge, but other than that, yeah, they haven't really bothered me too much. I reckon we should beat them. It won't be as easy as people think. But
They got
40 points of Sydney, you know, they're not going to be pushovers.
oh no, I don't think anyone's expecting them to be pushovers. They're a young side and they've got their tails up at the minute. And as you can see with kids,
Do you see the numbers they racked up last weekend? You know, Griffin 41 disposals, Liberatore 33, Cross 32, Cooney 30, Wallace 29. These guys are absolutely killing it.
they're also the Bulldogs are ranked first in the league for handballs per game, 5th in the league for tackles per game, and 4th for hitouts. 2nd for contested possessions and 2nd for clearances.
Well, clearances. Yeah, look, Liberatore 13, Griffin 10 against the Swans.
Yeah.
You know, they were great inside. Wow. I mean, that's impressive. And they've got some confidence, you know.
Yeah. Having said all that, though, they are ranked 15th in the league for kicks per game and 17th for marks per game.
Yeah, their problem is they haven't got anyone kick a goal. Guess what? Who does that remind you of?
They got, Bulldogs have always reminded me of us. Like, even when they were up there doing good before they grabbed Barry Hall, they were that big, tall forward away from challenging those couple of years.
Yeah.
Playing on a smaller setup like we were at the time. Yeah, they're also ranked 14th in the league for inside 50s per game.
So a lot of possessions, but they're not necessarily getting it forward. So
yeah, they're doing a lot around the stoppages and a lot around the half back, I feel. But they're not really getting it in. 15th in the league for marks inside 50 as well, which goes back to they don't have a big forward to kick their goals, much like us of the past few years.
All right, so did you guys talk about the ins and outs?
No,
not yet.
All right. We've got some big ins and some big outs this week. Cruz's out injured with a calf injury. Carazzo's out injured with a calf injury. Robinson is out, which is interesting. He's just out omitted. The interesting thing of that is he was named in Carlton's best last week, and Lucas has been omitted. Jared Waite is in for his first game for a while, apparently. Warnock is in for Cruiser, the only ruckman we had left. And Bootsma and Menzel have been named in this side. Bryce Gibbs will play his 150th, and Dennis Armfield will play his 100th game for the Blues. Guys, your opinion on the ins and outs?
Bizarre, really. I mean, nominally we've got 2 talls in. Bootsma you can class as a 3rd tall. Well, theoretically that's where he may end up, but he's sort of more that sort of 190-ish height. and one tall out. I didn't even know Cruiser was injured, so I was a bit surprised to see that. Bulldogs aren't necessarily they're not a very tall team. You know, they've got some players that play tall, but they're not that tall themselves. So I'm just wondering about the balance, and I'm looking at our emergencies with McInnes. I'm not. I mean, I'd like McInnes in the side, but he's not. I don't think he's not going to be one to come in. But Robinson and Graham, I'm just wondering whether Waite is ready, and whether you might find Robinson or Graham in Waite's stead.
Yeah, one thing they could be doing though is trying to stretch them a little bit, because as I mentioned just before, with them being ranked so low for marks, is like if we can go in tall and really get those marks inside our forward 50, we wouldn't have too much to worry about with them contesting us in the air. Could be a normal process.
Yeah, we generally go in with less talls in our opposition, and we rely on getting the ball to ground and using our foot speed. So height has worked against us in the past.
That could be the direction with our small forwards lacking the form that they normally have.
Well, maybe, but I mean, we've seen it backfire. We've seen a lot of teams go in a bit too tall against us, and we've cleaned them up at ground level. That seemed to be, and now we sort of totally reverse that psychology. So, let's see. I mean, it's at Etihad. If there is weather around, then the roof will be closed, you assume. So, we are a decent. Well, if Waite does play, so Waite, Henderson, Jamison, they're very good contested marks. So,
Waite said something interesting, ODN, in his interview on Carlton Football. He said he said he's hoping that he'll be playing this weekend, so he's been picked. And then he went on to say whether it's down back or up forward, we'll see.
Yeah, Malthouse alluded to that a couple of weeks ago, or before the last game. He said, Waite's played there before. It might be time, and I'm thinking they want to keep Henderson forward and maybe throw Waite back, because Waite's goal kicking is obviously up the Scheisenhausen. We saw Waite back at centre half back in great form before he had a knee injury. A few years back. I can't remember how long ago now. It was just before Fev left. So, and he was playing centre half back. He was in all Australian form. He got picked for a representative side, and then he went down with his knee, so he didn't make the All Australian side that year. But he certainly, it's all about his recovery.
I'm a fan of Waite back.
Yeah, look, he can spoil anything, and he's got great closing speed. Got a good leap to leap over those forwards, and when the ball hits the ground, he's going to recover first every time.
I'd like to see him back there,
but just not too deep. Just back in
centre half back.
Centre half back, right on that 50 arc, somewhere along that way, or just in around 40, 50.
Yeah, perfect.
I think he'll kill it as far as intercept marks.
And we can release Watson forward occasionally as well.
All right, guys, we got a tip for this weekend.
Carlton by 68.
68, eh? Given the way we've been playing. So, Justin Batley, your tip for the weekend.
I think we'll win it by about 4 goals.
Okay, and the old Dark Navy's your tip for the weekend.
Already gave my tip. I said 30 points.
Very
I think
nice.
you missed stock.
I'm going to tip 21 points, as I generally always do.
I'm tipping 500.
No, I want what you've got, Doc.
Okay.
You want some of me? I'll fire you.
We probably should have made a mention of the fact that with the ins and outs, it was disappointing to see Graham still in the emergencies. I'm not sure. I don't want to bag anybody out, but I'm not sure why Bootsma needs to come back in for this particular game, and Graham couldn't get a go at it. Some people are saying there's a school of thought that Keisha, Curnow, those sort of guys in the side are keeping Graham out, but I think he plays a different role. I think he's more of a truer midfielder rather than sort of negating midfielders. So it would have been
Did everyone go to the game last week?
I did.
Were you watching Yaron when he came off?
Yeah, not when he left the ground. I saw him on the ground, and after seeing him on the ground, I didn't want to see him anymore.
He's gone, mate. I'll tell you, he's gone.
Yeah, that's what I think.
He's gone.
Yeah.
He was laughing his head off. He thought it was all really funny last week, and he was walking during the game.
Yeah, there was one point there where Brock had time to peel off his man and chase down Yaron's man and made Yaron look slow, and that was Brock.
Nah, he's gone.
Tonight, Happy Dude talks to former Carlton vice-captain Nick Stevens. He played 104 games and kicked 61 goals for the Blues after crossing from Port Adelaide in 2004 before he retired with a serious neck injury in 2009. He was vice-captain of the Blues from 2007 until his retirement and featured in both their pre-season premiership sides in 2005 and 2007. He remains the only man to win the Michael Tuck medal at two different clubs, having also won it at Port Adelaide in 2002. He currently coaches the Gippsland Power TAC Cup under-18 side, and the Bigfooty Blues podcast team is extremely grateful for his time.
Cleverly done for Vola to Bentic to Stevens. Man on the mark, just inside 50, and Stevens, by the look of him, wants to give it off.
Well, Stevens' opponent for 3 quarters has been Damien Peverill. Now it's Winderlick.
Standing in the last of the sunshine, but the punt right into the ground from 50. It's a good kick. It is a mighty kick. And the Blues lead.
Good evening. Tonight, I have the special privilege of sitting across from the great man who played 231 games of football. 104 of those were for our great club, the Carlton Football Club, Mr. Nick Stevens.
How you going?
Yeah, good, thanks. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad.
Yeah. What have you been up to since you finished playing?
Yeah, since retirement. Well, when I first retired, I had a landscaping business, and then pretty much did that for a couple of years and went back into football in a part-time basis. I coached New South Wales in the state under-18s and under-16 side, so I did that through the national championships, and that was only about 12 weeks a year. So I did that for 2 years, and then in my second year of that, I actually worked part-time as Richmond's midfield coach with Brendan Lade. And then at the end of that year, I decided that I wanted to go full-time into footy, so I got out of my landscaping business and moved down to Traralgon to coach Gippsland Power in the TAC Cup under-18s, and I also worked for AFL Victoria doing all the development in Latrobe Valley.
You sort of knocked off two of my other questions there. One of them was about the commute down here, if you've moved a bit closer to the Latrobe Valley. The other one was about your landscaping business.
Yeah.
Another question I had to ask you was obviously about the neck injury that ended up finishing your career. How's that going for you now? Do you still have a bit of pain, or?
Yeah, no, I'm actually very fortunate with the neck injury. The second time that I did it, where I had to retire, I actually got told if I rest for 12 months that it would have come good on its own, and probably in hindsight I probably maybe shouldn't have retired and stuck out another 12 months and seen how it come back. And if I knew it came back as well as it has, I probably would have stuck around and still played, and hopefully maybe still be playing at the Great Carlton Football Club. My good mate Heath Scotland's still running around, so I always joke with him and say, if you're still running around, I could still be running around. But unfortunately, I had that injury, and but thank God now I really don't feel it one bit. And I've actually played a few games locally for Traralgon, so it's been good fun getting out there and having a bit of a kick locally, and feeling good. So once again, the neck, I don't feel it at all, and I live a normal life like everyone else.
So I think my boss phone.
No worries.
I'll start that again. As coaching some football sides, as you said, you have been over the past few years, and with the neck injury, how do you feel about the current players today that seem to duck into free kicks?
Yeah, look, it's a tough one at the moment. It's a real grey area, and one that you hope to think that people don't do it too much, but it's definitely crept into the game that players do go in head first, and you just hope that no one gets a bad injury because of it. And obviously young Whitey, I think from Carlton had a bad episode a couple of weeks back. So thank God he's okay, and will come out of it okay. But you hope that someone doesn't get a serious injury, because the 12 months that I went through was a pretty horrific time in my life, and one that I wouldn't wish upon anyone.
Yeah, no, definitely no good. Whitey, I think, did his for Preston.
Yeah.
Which I think you played some under-18s for them in the TAC side as well. Yeah. The other one was back to your Port playing games days when you decided to leave. Obviously, they went on to win a flag, and as you've mentioned in some interviews before, the situation at Carlton was probably a lot worse than what you thought it was.
Yeah, it was. It's always it's a funny question, and one that I get asked a lot and have spoken about 1,000 times over the journey.
I considered dodging it, but
it's one that, look, I'm happy to openly talk about it, and it's one that I say that look, I do in a way regret leaving Port at the time, because I missed out on the flag, and but having said that, at the time I thought that we might have missed our opportunity at Port, and I thought going back to Melbourne, going to Carlton at the time, I had plenty of years on the side, and thought that we'd rebuild a side, and in that time, hopefully in the 6 or so years, that I'd get a chance to play in a flag. So unfortunately, things didn't work out, but I don't regret going and getting my opportunity at Carlton, because I think it's made me a lot better football coach as well, and made me a better player, spending my time there and going through the hard yards. And I get great joy in seeing the guys play good footy now, and I still love seeing Port Adelaide going so well this year. It's great to have the two clubs that you can follow and actually take a real interest in.
Yes, you just mentioned the two clubs that you followed as well. That brings you to my next question about Collingwood. Obviously, Collingwood was your club of choice, and the two clubs couldn't come to terms, so you entered the draft knowing that more than likely Carlton was going to pick you up. Did playing for Carlton change your perspective on the rivalry between the two clubs, or?
I'll answer that in two different. Probably part one of the question was, everyone thought that Collingwood was my choice of club and that I was going to go to Collingwood, but in actual fact I knew that I was never going to go to Collingwood, because when I spoke to Mark Williams about leaving Port Adelaide, he blatantly said to me that I wouldn't end up going to Collingwood. So I pretty much knew with Carlton where they were in the draft and the position they were in, that I was pretty much going to end up there. And the other club was Essendon, that was in the mix, so I could have easily ended up at Essendon as well. So the way it turned out, I went to Carlton, and it was always probably a good feel-good story, because I barracked for Collingwood as a kid, and I think the media just loved talking that side of it up.
Yeah, we've seen that over the past few years with Brendan Goddard, obviously, in the St Kilda. And every pre-season, it seems to be, he was linked with going to Carlton until he eventually went to Essendon. Being a Collingwood supporter and then playing for Carlton, would Essendon be your most disliked team?
Yeah, it's funny, because when I went to Carlton, you always think that it's Collingwood-Carlton rivalry, and when I went to Essendon, I just couldn't believe the rivalry that they had and the hatred that they had for Essendon Football Club. And you ask anyone throughout their years at Carlton, it's just a real Carlton-Essendon rivalry, and it's one that's drummed into you. So when you go to the club, you can't help but buy into it, and Essendon's always a massive game, and one that everyone talks about. And look, I've got a lot of respect for Essendon Football Club. I think they're an outstanding football club, and they do a tremendous job. But it was great to beat them, I must admit. When you played Collingwood, Essendon, Richmond, all those big clubs were always great games to be involved in, and great ones to win.
Yeah, Essendon's probably my most disliked club. Bit conflict of interest for me, because my fiance is an Essendon supporter. So
okay. I
do have to deal with that one a fair bit. Over the 6 years at the Carlton Football Club, the media loved going off about Favola and his off-field type shenanigans, and how it had a big effect on the playing group. Did it really have that sort of effect on the playing group, or was it just sort of he was off doing his own stupid thing? And
yeah, it's a funny one with Fev, and it's another thing that you get asked all the time. And I think the media blew it out a lot worse than what it was. And look, I loved playing footy with Brendan Favola, and he was a big game player. He was outstanding. Sure, he had a few little things that I'm sure he would love to take back, but it's not like he he didn't harm anyone or do anything all that bad. Look, he could have got his discipline a bit better and everything like that. But having said that, I loved playing with the guy, and he's one guy that if I went into a final series now, he'd be one of the first guys I'd pick because you knew he'd play well in big games, and he was just an absolute sensational player. So I've got nothing but praise for Fev. Look, he probably could have been handled a little bit different over the journey, but Fev's a unique person. Everyone probably glosses on the bad things that he did, but he also brought a lot of people through the gates and did a lot of things for kids and on family days and everything like that. So it's a bit of a hard one because he's a lovable lad and one that frustrated you at times, but on other times you loved having him in the side.
Yeah, that's one thing that they always failed to mention, as in the media, is the stuff he did for the kids at family days and stuff. And I went down to a few open training sessions when he was still on the list, and he was quite good signing and having a chat with people as well. Yeah. And it's sort of stuff that goes unnoticed that's a bit frustrating. He was
a remarkable person like that, and you look at some of the guys that can't get inside quick enough, and Vev was one that he'd always be the last guy out on the ground, signing autographs and making sure that he gave plenty back to the supporters, and that's what he was about. And he loved the kids and loved helping out. So that's the sort of person that he was.
Yep. Another one to ask you is about towards the end of Pagan's coaching at Carlton. A lot of people saying that the players stopped playing for the coach and all that. Is that true, or was it just more of a...
No, I think at the end of that era, it was it just had to happen that Dennis had to go, and he was probably a victim of basically the club not having enough funds, enough support around him, all those little things. That you probably had 3 or 4 guys trying to run a footy club where you go down to Carlton Footy Club now, and the staff, there'd be 5 times the amount of staff there now than what it was, 5 or 6 years ago. So Dennis was probably a little bit of a victim of a bad squad, no draft picks, everything like that. And I'm sure that, if he had the financial support and everything else that, Dennis may be still coaching now, it's not a thing that, I wouldn't go out and say that I didn't like Dennis Pagan or anything like that, because Dennis did a lot for me and taught me a lot about coaching now and about playing footy.
Oh, yeah. That's good too. Who do you think was your toughest opponent to play on?
This is a good question I always get asked, and it's probably, I've got a lot of respect for a guy, Drew Banfield, who played for West Coast Eagles. I played on Drew a lot of times, and we had some great battles, but he was always a really tough tagger to beat because he was fit, strong and quick and just a fierce competitor. So I'd probably say, Drew Branfield. I was lucky enough to play on Crawford and Voss and those sort of guys, Buckley at different stages. So it was always an honour to play against, some of those greats, and you learn a lot off those guys.
Oh, yeah. How about a guy who's been in the media a little bit lately about some of his unorthodox tagging techniques? Crowley. Yeah.
Yeah, I had some good run-ins with Crowley over the journey. And,
I got asked to bring up Crowley.
Yeah, he's probably one that, me and Krause, I actually didn't find him, that annoying or anything like that.
Yep.
Both myself and him had a few good wrestles over the journey and a few good battles. But, yeah, he's made himself a really good player, and he knows what his game's about and does the job for the team. And, some of these guys that, get sucked into wrestling and fighting and, I was fortunate enough to learn very early in my career that, the best way to beat your taggers is just to keep working hard and running, and the more contests you get to, the more ball you're going to win. So I was fortunate that, I got tagged from an early age, and something that I actually loved and thought as a bit of a compliment. So it wasn't a burden on me, and I think that the day that you embrace that side of it is the day that you start to beat it and not worry. And I think probably Murph at this stage is going through that transition phase where he's probably copying the number 1 tag, and Murph's a quality player and a quality bloke, and he'll come out the other side and he'll be a superstar of the game over the next few years.
Yeah, that was going to be one of my next questions, was how do you think Murphy will handle the captaincy Obviously, you played with him for a couple of years there.
Yeah, look, I think Murph's is a great individual. He's just a quality person to have around the footy club. He's a great leader. He trains hard, but what people have got to remember is he's growing into being a captain, and you can't expect these guys to go in and just be an outstanding leader from day one when they've got all these other pressures that they're dealing with. And Murph will end up being a great captain. And look, I think he's still doing a great job now. He's had a little bit of bad luck with injury as well, and you throw all that together, and it's a big ask for a guy of his age. And not everyone's a Joel Selwood, and that's what people have got to realise. Like, Joel Selwood is one out of the box that's just an unbelievable player and captain, and I think Murph will end up, being an outstanding captain and one of the Carlton greats.
Yes, I actually have the same belief for him too. 8 years on, after you decided to play in the pre-season premiership instead of going to your brother's wedding, how do you still feel about that decision there?
Oh, look, it's probably one of the regrets that I have. I'd still talk about this and openly say it, but I was paid to play at Carlton Football Club. That was my job, and I love the club, and I always put the club first. And I think that the supporters need to realise that I sacrificed a lot for that place, and that meant when my brother's wedding was on, I was there to do a job, and we were going through a hard transition phase. And I remember Dennis Pagan saying to me at the time that he'll support whatever I do, but my brother actually said to me at the time, he said, "Mate, you're here to play football for the Carlton Football Club. They pay you big money to do it, and that's what you got to do. You're a leader at the place." And so for me at the time, it was never a decision that was tough to make, because when I committed to the club, I made sure that they came first, and that's what it was about. So looking back on it, I'll probably go, well, if I had my time again, would I have done it for a pre-season game? Well, probably not, because family's forever and all those sort of things. But I don't regret it at the time, because we came out and won, and I had a great game, so I was happy. And my brother doesn't hold any regrets and anything like that. So yeah, I was fortunate to have a great brother through all that.
Yeah, that's good there. And probably the last question I have to ask you, one of the guys wanted me to ask you, would you like to play this weekend?
This weekend? I would give anything to play this weekend. I tell you, if I could run out there and play again, it would be the best feeling in my life. And I'm lucky I've got Peter Francis next door, who's my boss, former Carlton player as well. And Pete and I often talk about what we do to get out there and play. And I'm fortunate enough that I live every day coaching. That's what I do. It's what I love, and I'm lucky that I get out and have a kick with the boys and still think I'm 18 again and running around. And the guys that are out there playing footy, it is the best job in the world, and one that I would give anything to go back and start my career again and just relive it all. I've got no regrets about my career. I was happy the way it's played out. I was very fortunate to play a lot of games before I got injured, and I just wish I could do it all again, because every minute of every day that you spend in the AFL environment is just a great place to be. And I'd love to get back to the Carlton Football Club at some stage.
I also was meant to ask, are there any kids coming through the TAC Gippsland Power that we should probably watch out for?
Yeah, well, you've probably got one of our best ones last year that you picked up in Nick Graham, who must be very close to...
Yeah, rumour has it he's going to debut this weekend.
Yeah, well, I think he will. I think Nick will get his opportunity this week. Nick's an outstanding person and a great character, and he was a sensational player for us last year, and one that I'll take a lot of joy in seeing him debut, and hopefully, he gets his chance this week, and he'll be a great player for the Carlton Footy Club for a long time, I'm sure. But yeah, we've got plenty of kids coming through again this year, and hopefully the Blue Boys pick up another one, because I think they're pretty happy with Nick Graham, the way he's gone this year.
Yeah, cool. Well, thank you for your time. I think that's all I have to ask you about.
No worries.
Yeah.
And that was former Carlton Vice-Captain Nick Stevens talking with Happy Dude. Guys, any comments?
In regards to, I was quite interested to hear what he said about Essendon being sort of the number one rival within the club. Now, I've traditionally backed the Carlton-Collingwood rivalry a lot. And, I think the Essendon thing is more of a, something more recent and not necessarily a long-lasting rivalry. But the fact that the club thinks of Essendon as being the ones that they have to beat more so than Collingwood, I guess, I don't know. It feels a little bit like a generational change. And as I said, I've argued in the past that no, to younger supporters, no, it's not Essendon, it's Collingwood. They're the ones that are mostly, but it's a bit of a changing of the guard, really.
Yeah, for me, I've always been the arguer that Essendon is the bigger rival, and even in like the Carlton history books from Out of the Blue or whatever it's called, it's got stuff about the Essendon rivalry dating back to the 30s and 40s.
Yeah, but the Collingwood rivalry dated back to before the VFL even started, back when Carlton's effluent used to run through the streets of Collingwood, and there was a little bit of the Blue Bloods versus the riffraff kind of attitude about it, and Carlton and Collingwood playing off bigger games before Essendon.
It goes back to like when they stole our captain, for crying out loud, back in the 1890s. There's the 1909 grand final.
Oh, the 1910.
There's all sorts of shenanigans that go on with the Carlton Collingwood thing, and I think if you're an older supporter, that holds true, because we were playing in grand finals in 1980, 1981, 1980, 81, 1979.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not a light, right? It's the same thing with the Richmond rivalry to a lesser degree as well. If you're an older person, these things tend to hold a bit more weight. Whereas Essendon was a whole. If you were a 90s kid or a 90s supporter, that kind of triggered from then.
Yeah.
And as Odian and I were talking about on the podcast, on the Mainboard podcast last night, nothing will please me greater than if Essendon get knocked out lose all their points for the year, get knocked out of the finals, and we take their place.
Yeah. See that I've always hoped for that.
That will be the highlight of my year. In fact, if that happens, that will be the highlight of my week every week until the season ends.
Yeah.
That's
Nick Stevens also mentioned about Nick Graham, the quality of the kid, and then he had heard that he was probably going to get a game this week too, and we see him on the emergency. So, I speculated during the main Carlton podcast that there could be a late change, and if there is, I suspect it'll be Graham. But it'll be I'm sure nothing will please Nick Stevens any more than seeing Nick Graham get a game.
Yeah. Probably my favourite answer that I got throughout the whole interview was the answer to Wookie's question about would you like to play this weekend?
I know what got me about that was I was being facetious.
I thought I asked this. I thought I asked it to get a facetious answer, but the answer that he responded with just sort of made me appreciate the smaller things that you can enjoy doing now that you probably won't be able to. And when you look back and sort of think, geez, if I could do that again.
And I was
working out in my head how old he was and what sort of 33. Yeah, what sort of shape he was in, and imagining some pinpoint delivery inside our forward 50 for a change.
For me, it was.
He looks like he probably could have still been out on the park if he had taken a 12-month leave. But then that's hindsight, as he mentioned at the start. He said if he knew his neck was going to come out as good as it has, he probably would have taken the 12 months. But you don't know, and I'm glad he opted to retire and not risk it, because the last thing you want is to be in pain for the rest of your life.
Yeah. No, all up, it was a great interview, mate. You did really, really well.
Oh, look, and just I'd like to thank participating. It's a big get for us, and it's much appreciated.
Let's wrap up this podcast because I seem to be getting interrupted a lot tonight.
You're good, mate.
And it's beginning to annoy me a little bit. If it's not that, it's my internet cutting out. So, what are we looking forward to on the weekend, gentlemen?
I'm looking forward to a 4-quarter performance. I'm looking forward to, I'm hoping that Warnock will negate Minson in the ruck. I'm looking forward to the return of Waite, because every time he comes back, he he straightens us up in some way, whether he's back or forward. He's going to add a little bit of X factor to that side, and we seem to do better when he's in the side. So, and Menzel, let's hope he's not sub. I'd love to see him get a full game and see what he can do.
Yeah.
Yep. I'm looking forward to Menzel as well, and Wait, like you said, but hopefully a win. I've already had my highlight from the week, and that was meeting Nick. Probably one of the nicest blokes I've ever met. Really is a top bloke.
Real talk.
He came across as a top bloke.
Oh, he was. He was just
Yeah,
such a great
he
person.
really did come across well.
I was just going to say one thing about the interview. I'll tell you later.
No, go nuts, man.
Yeah.
When you interview someone, and he was giving a lot of really good responses to your questions. It's really nice to sort of, before you go to the next question, acknowledge, very briefly something about what the guy just said, because that way it links the question you've just finished. You ran.
I actually had.
He did that a couple times.
Yeah, I actually had a list of questions in front of me, and I thought originally it was only going to be like 10 minutes, but then I started taking up a lot of his time, and I felt like I didn't want to waste a lot of his time. And then he actually ended up guessing. I didn't show him my list of questions, and he guessed half of them.
Yeah, I thought you did a fantastic job. You've got a natural style about you. So good on you.
That'd be fairly daunting, I reckon.
Yeah.
Oh, it was. You could tell by the way I was talking at first, not finishing my questions, and I was very nervous.
Yeah, I forget that you must have been nervous too. So well done, mate. Well done.
No, I thought you did really well, man. All right, guys, we're going to wrap it up. This has been.
I'm excited.
It's been very short and sweet.
Now he's excited.
But thank you very much for coming on tonight, guys. Thanks to ODN.
I love you all.
Thanks, Just a Battler.
Thank you too, Wookie.
Thank you, Devoid of Caring.
Jeez.
And thanks, Happy Dude, for all your work this week. You've been a tremendous asset to the podcast.
Oh, anytime.
I love you especially, Happy Dude.
As opposed to you other guys that don't contribute anything.
Oh, jeez. God.
Real
Sucked in.
How unappreciated do we feel?
That's
You
right.
need to go hard and sack someone, Wook.
Well, that could happen too.
Yeah.
That's right.
All right, guys.